And you always need some people who are leading the way so that others, even if they move more cautiously, feel I'm not being as crazy as them, but I'm still making big steps. And so, yes, part of our mission is also to share the experiences we've had.
The University of Oxford, dreaming spires, hundreds upon hundreds of years of history. So perhaps 1960s brutalist architecture isn't what springs to mind. Well, we've come to Wolfson College, Oxford, who have been on a mission to decarbonise their Grade 2 listed building to become the UK's first zero-carbon higher education institution. We're here to find out more, and this is the Everything Electric Show.
Our 3 free YouTube channels on EVs and clean tech are funded by our fun-packed test drive-tastic events in Farnborough, London, the Southwest, the North, Melbourne and Sydney, and next up we're in Canada for Everything Electric Vancouver. And new for UK viewers, you can now buy a battery EV and much more at everythingelectric.store. Now, back to the episode.
Wolfson College was completed in 1974, so at a point in time where perhaps sustainability in terms of architecture wasn't really front and centre of that design. And fast forward to today, and that creates a bit of a challenge, because when you decarbonise, you need to retain the character and significance of these buildings, whilst also ensuring they're functional and efficient for future generations. I'm going to speak to Tim Hitchens, who is the president of Wolfson College, to find out a little more.
Wolfson is a modern college, and it was built in the late 60s and early 70s. We hadn't had the oil price crisis of the early 70s, and we were very keen to show that we were open and transparent and ambitious and all the things that Oxford doesn't traditionally say about itself. And that expressed itself in its architecture. So lots of concrete, lots of big panes of glass, letting lots of light in, but no care in the world at all about the way we were using our fuel. And so we had single panes of glass, and we were wasting heat like nobody's business. So we looked at other colleges and we thought we probably are the most heat inefficient place that exists in the whole of Oxford. And we had some research done, and if we did nothing, we would be wasting 28,000 cubic meters of CO2 in the course of the next few years. So we had to do something. And this coincided with us having a look at ourselves and saying, what would our founders, who were really quite radical people, what would they have been doing in the context of the climate crisis? And we felt that they would, had they been faced with this problem, be being ambitious. They would have wanted people to think, yes, you can. You know, we can't give up in the face of these challenges. And so we then looked very seriously at how we could deal with the problem.
An amazing ambition, and obviously hugely important, but I suspect it was one of those things where you started to scratch the surface and think, this is actually quite a big undertaking. Was it more complicated than you thought, and were the results worth it in the end?
It was, like any big undertaking, you don't quite know what you're taking on as you do it. But what we decided was, first of all, we were going to move really fast because we knew it would be disruptive. And rather than having 10 years of disruption, we wanted to have a very brief period of disruption. And we knew that we wanted to be leaders. And so we wanted to be cutting edge in terms of the technology. So we got some brilliant engineers who worked with us. They explained that we needed both a highly sophisticated heat pump technology, but most of the effort would be going to improve our insulation. There's a vast amount that you can do with improved insulation. So all of those single pane glasses, they had to be removed, and cutting edge triple layer glass had to be put in, and we had to retrofit all of our radiators. So some fairly basic stuff that was very disruptive to people, because as a college we continue to run right the way through the year, So all of this was going to happen while people were working here. But we felt, let's go big, let's make it happen quickly. And in the end, it was probably about 18 months for the bulk of it to happen. And the results have been spectacular.
Okay, Chris, we are in this room that feels like a museum piece. You can absolutely tell how old this equipment is just based on the font.
Yes.
But what's behind us? What are we looking at?
Well, we're looking at the original gas boilers here. So these are pretty much 50-year-old gas-fired boilers. There's 3 of them. And they produce around about 1.2 megawatts of energy for the college, or did. They were originally installed in 1974. And this was what the college relied on to heat all of the hot water and the heating around the whole of this main site, so the original main building. So around about 270 bedrooms or so. And this is what the college envisaged to replace with a decarbonised system back when we started this whole journey.
And it is such a delight to be in here because these are not running. It is very, very quiet in here. This is turned off.
So it would have been very different around about 3 years ago, just over 3 years ago. We would have had very noisy, very hot, a lot of emissions going out of the large chimneys you can see behind you. So we had a lot of carbon emissions going out into the atmosphere, obviously, from the back of these boilers. So yeah, it would have been a very different environment. And as you can see now, it's clean-ish. It's reasonably quiet, and there's no lost heat coming off this system now because we have brand new heat pumps that have replaced them.
So this is the new plant room.
This is.
We've kind of stepped outside because it is extremely noisy in there.
It is quite noisy.
It is a world away from the old plant room.
Yeah.
It is very, very sleek. But can you walk us through what exactly we're seeing in there?
Yeah, so in here we have 2 brand new CO2 refrigerant heat pumps, which were pioneering and still are pioneering, to be fitted inside the interior of a heritage building, such as the college here. So these are now producing less energy than the original boilers because the college now has a lower energy demand. So these are around about 800 kilowatts of power as opposed to 1.2 megawatts, something around that degree. So there are 2 heat pumps. They're backed up by electric boilers and other electric backup systems, so we are totally fossil fuel free. The other point to note about the electricity that feeds these is that it comes from a renewable source as well, in nuclear. So we have a renewably backed energy supply via our electricity that comes from to the college. So.
And give us a sense of the scale here, because you've got a lot of people who live here.
Yep.
You've got a lot of lecture halls. You've got a lot of office buildings.
Yes.
Give us a sense of the scale.
Yeah, so the scale. So we have 270 people living here overnight. Actually, more than that because we have families and children. So quite delicate in terms of their environmental demands and needs. We also have the main kitchen, of course. Everyone needs to eat, so we have to power all of the hot water and the fuel that goes into the heating to heat some of the kitchen equipment as well. A lecture theatre, various other seminar rooms. So it's a very busy college. There's always activities 7 days a week, even through the night. Being a postgrad college, our students demand heating 24/7 because they're studying through the night as well. So not just during the day. So there is a huge demand for it. But we've done all this work to create a lower energy demand by improving building fabric and then putting in these pioneering heat pumps.
So this is the plant room, but over here I need to point this out to you because there is a company on site here at Wolfson College called Oxbike, and they recycle and refurbish old bikes that are existing across Oxford. This pile of bikes here is a tiny, tiny fraction of the total number of bikes that they're refurbishing and recycling. There is a huge pile of them way over there. But I think it really points to the fact that supporting local businesses, ensuring that students can move around the city in an affordable and sustainable way. And as well as Oxbike, they also have an electric minibus available to students as well. Were there any people who resisted the changes?
I think there's no change that matters that doesn't have resistance. I think we went through an interesting curve in that because this was expressed in terms of tackling an existential climate challenge, at the beginning we had everyone on board because they loved the idea that we were going to do something that changed us so dramatically. Then once you get going, people start to realise this really is going to have big impacts. And first of all, there were some students who were having to move out of the rooms. that they were having to move out at times that we hadn't been able to completely plan beforehand. So there's a certain amount of resistance from the students as it went through their rooms. And then there were a number of fellows who had said, we must do this even if it's tough. And then it started hitting their rooms and they said, does it really have to be this disruptive? But then the curve, the benign part of the curve came where the work was being done and people were suddenly saying, God, it used to be very, very cold in here and now it's toasty warm. And that we're not having to play with our radiators at all, it's just happening as it is. And we've managed to achieve zero where we were trying to go down to zero. And so the pride, the collective pride was very high. And I think an interesting point is if you've been through difficulty, you feel even prouder at the end of it. It's a bit like climbing a mountain. And having climbed that mountain and then come to the other side and come back down again, people were feeling particularly happy to have been part of it.
And that's the thing, I guess, when you can feel it very tangibly. Either you've seen the disruption and then you feel the benefits of having a less drafty space in which to work. And especially if you're working on your laptop, you're not moving around, you need it to be super comfortable. But I suspect there's also been some huge cost savings as a consequence because you're not chucking heat out into the open.
We early on decided this was not to do with saving money. And part of the reason is, as you will know and your viewers will know, the price of electricity and the price of gas. So the amount that we are using of energy is dramatically down. But we did happen to be going straight into the Ukraine crisis, and therefore the price of gas and electricity was up. And moving from gas to electricity, actually per unit, gas is cheaper than electricity. So we know that we've reduced the amount of energy we use by 90%, but it hasn't immediately shown a drop in the bills. Now, once the world sorts out, and British government sorts out its electricity market, and making sure that the costs of electricity are separated from the costs of gas, there will be a dramatic saving. But at the moment, I can't hand on heart say we've saved loads of money. What we have is much less energy being used, certainly no fossil fuels being used at all in the production of that, a much more comfortable environment, and showing that you can do this. This is not an area of life that one needs to be pessimistic about. You could be optimistic. If you put the money in place and you get the people focused on it, you can achieve these things. And that, for us, it's as much passing that message on to everybody else that matters as it is our own comfort.
So, got fabric of the building,
Yes.
insulation, double glazing, heating.
Yes.
What else? What have you done?
We've just sought planning permission and been given planning permission to expand our solar panels, our PVs on the roofs. We have a lot of flat roofs around this college, being 1970s design. So there's lots of opportunity to increase the amount of energy we can create ourselves through converting solar to electricity. We also have a plan to store some of that energy within a battery, a large battery on site, in the future at some point, which we can then become almost self-sufficient and stop drawing energy off of the grid and allow more people to use more electricity outside of a college.
And you've got a number of sort of more Victorian buildings, or buildings that sort of exist outside of the confines of the college. Have you looked at those as well?
We have. So we have actually decarbonised those as a secondary project to this main site. So we removed all the gas boilers and put air source heat pumps over there, slightly different from those large ones you just saw. But and we also replaced a lot of the glazing, the windows, and we've insulated the interior and outside of the walls on those properties. So we still have more windows to change. There's always more fabric improvements to be done around the college, and that's something else we're going to be working on over the next few years, is to make it as airtight and as efficient energy-wise as possible.
There are lots of organisations out there who won't have the same sort of rationale for carrying out these projects. They may see the inconvenience, the fact that it might not have a cost saving, and might say, do you know what, it's not worth the faff. What do you think needs to happen to help other businesses or organisations go on this journey and to see that it has value for them?
I think people need to see that A, it can be done, it's not impossible. B, the amount of energy you use can fall dramatically. C, that the productivity, I mean, we are an academic organisation, so we're not producing material, but we are creating an environment for young people and more senior academics to work and prosper in, and having a comfortable place where they're not worried about drafts, where they are able to study without having to put woolly hats on. That's productivity as far as we're concerned, and definitely productivity has gone up. So the results have been very, very spectacular. I guess also, and maybe this is to do with being an academic environment, we have some very high-minded people here who do see their role as making the world a better place. We have young people here for whom this is their world that they're moving into, and for us not to do something about their environment would be a betrayal of them. And so if you're looking at the financial bottom line over the next 5 years, we certainly haven't lost money, but we haven't made massive savings. But if you're looking at an organisation that needs to be fit for the rest of this century, and that needs to be confident that its own people are on board for its own activities, then doing this is absolutely essential.
What we've seen here today is unbelievably impressive. This is a retrofit project on steroids. The fact that there are hundreds of stakeholders, hundreds of people who live here, a Grade 2 listed building which introduces all sorts of complexities. And yet they've proved that it's possible. So what's possible for other businesses and organisations who have a much more straightforward remit? Let us know what you think in the comments. Please do like and subscribe. And if you have been, thank you for watching.
Now visit electricvehicles.expert, where you can follow everything electric and keep current with Clean Technica, The Driven, Electrek, and many more.